Apple Card is the perfect card for your holiday shopping. When you use Apple Card on your iPhone, you'll earn up to 3% daily cash back on every purchase, including products at Apple like a new iPhone 16 or Apple Watch Ultra. Apply now in the Wallet app on your iPhone. Subject to credit approval, Apple Card issued by Goldman Sachs Bank USA, Salt Lake City branch. Terms and more at applecard.com. Apple Card is the perfect card for your holiday shopping. When you use Apple Card on your iPhone, you'll earn up to 3% daily cash back on every purchase, including products at Apple like a new iPhone 16 or Apple Watch Ultra. Apply now in the Wallet app on your iPhone. Subject to credit approval, Apple Card issued by Goldman Sachs Bank USA, Salt Lake City branch. Terms and more at applecard.com. You're listening to Well Now, Slate's podcast on health and wellness. I'm Maya Feller.
And I'm Kavita Patel. Today, we're diving into a fascinating topic: the science behind how women can gain social influence, particularly when it comes to health and wellness. This is an important area because research shows that women often face unique challenges in having their voices heard and their expertise recognized, even in fields where they are highly qualified. For example, a study published in the Journal of Applied Psychology found that women's ideas are often overlooked in group settings, even when they have more expertise than their male counterparts. I'm sure you can believe this, but can you believe this?
I mean, Kavita, I'm just shaking my head, and I can believe it, and I have experienced it. And it can have real consequences, especially in healthcare. For instance, in a 2018 study in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences, in this journal, they found that female patients were 32% less likely to survive a heart attack when treated by a male physician compared to a female physician. It really highlights why it's so crucial for women to be able to effectively advocate for themselves and others in health and wellness contexts.
Yeah, Maya, and it's not, think about that. It's a statistic around being a female patient, but then also having a leader who's a physician, who's a female. And we know that half of the medical schools in the country are women, but not necessarily represented in the decision-making roles when you're thinking, for example, about staffing a hospital. So it's not just about the individual interactions. But we also know from research that when women are in leadership positions in those very same healthcare organizations, it does lead to better patient outcomes overall, just like in that example you gave with a heart attack. So Maya, I know that this is resonating. I know that for people who can't see you, you're wildly shaking and nodding your head in belief and concordance. But can you just tell us a little bit about maybe your individual professional experience?
Yeah. So the thing that I always find interesting is in dietetics, it is largely female and actually largely white. And so in dietetics, as a Black woman dietitian, it's like a double burden. So we're definitely at the bottom of the healthcare chain. We're rarely listened to, even though nutrition in many cases can be real adjuvant therapy. When you think about people coming out of cardiac rehab, like, nutrition really matters, yet we show up at the table and are left out of the conversations. And don't be a Black dietitian, because we're definitely not going to be listened to. And I see it with my patients all the time. I think, Kavita, I might have told you this story about a woman patient that I had who had extraordinary menstrual bleeding and went to the doctor, and they completely took a look at her, and she was in a very large body, and they said, you need to lose weight. And there was not a discussion around this extraordinary menstrual bleeding. And it's like, these are the things that stick out to me as so egregious, because they happen all the time and again and again. So, I don't know, Kavita, it really lands in a very, I'd say, real personal way for me, but then also professionally, when I think about how we show up in spaces and how we try to command social influence and how we try to put ourselves in positions where people respect us. I know that there's work to be done. So Kavita, tell us, what does the research actually say about women and how we can increase our social influence?
Yeah, and trust me, I know a lot about this literature, mostly because I too found myself in a similar position as you, that as I found, job opportunities, or even the way people would talk to me about things I should do in transitions of my career, it was a very different conversation between male colleagues. And not everybody is exactly the same, but very different conversations that were so different in a dramatic way. So I did look at the science and tried to understand, well, what can we do if we're listening to this, nodding our heads? Well, one strategy is what researchers call strategic warmth. Basically, finding ways to be both competent and likable. This is interesting because there's often this idea that women have to choose one or the other. You have to choose between being seen as nice or being seen as competent. But the studies show that women who can balance both traits are actually more influential. Another important factor is actually building strong social networks and alliances. And Maya, I'm not talking about just, clicking like or clicking friend or clicking follow on LinkedIn. This is really taking a look at like who's in your squad, who are the 5 to 10 people that you spend a lot of time with, or that you have this strong degree of trust. And that really constitutes your social network, but you do need to tap into it and activate it, which is something I think, Maya, that probably, honestly, I don't do. I don't know how you feel, but I'm not sure if you do it.
I mean, Kavita, I definitely don't do it. I'm great at relationship building. And one thing that I've learned is that I'm a super giver. Uh, I think that it's something. I had a conversation with a woman friend in the farmer's market of all places, but the conversation was basically like, as women, we're taught to give, and we give and we give and we give. And I kind of joked and I was like, yeah, it could be the dead of winter and someone could say, could I have your shoes? And there's a possibility that I would consider giving my shoes over. And so when I think about my social networks and alliances, I definitely know that I'm in that giver position, and that I have a really hard time saying like, hey, can you vouch for me? Or do you have a suggestion for me? It's not, I don't ask. I definitely don't ask for support. I see it in work. I see it in my relationships and in my social relationships. So I know that this is a space where, yeah, I could definitely grow and expand on that part of how I show up. And finally, there's evidence that women can increase their influence by being strategic about that self-promotion, finding ways to highlight their accomplishments without triggering backlash. So that's one reason why I am so excited, Kavita, to talk to our guest today. I was thrilled when you had this book sent to me. I literally slept with it. Dr. Alison Fragale, she's a professor of organizational behavior who has spent years studying these exact issues.
Hey, Wellnow listeners, if you're enjoying the show and want to hear more, subscribe to our feed. New episodes come out every Wednesday morning. While you're there, check out our other episodes too, like last week's about caring for our hormonal health with Alicia Montgomery. Check it out. This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. This month is all about gratitude, but there's one person we don't thank enough: ourselves. It's sometimes hard to remind ourselves that we're trying our best to make sense of everything, and in this world, that is not easy. Practicing gratitude can improve your personal well-being, and you might find it beneficial to learn gratitude-building techniques from a therapist. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. BetterHelp can help you tackle life's challenges by providing accessible and affordable care. It's entirely online, and it's designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. With BetterHelp, you can message a professional therapist anytime, anywhere. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists anytime for no additional charge. Let the gratitude flow with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/wellnow today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/wellnow.
Apple Card is the perfect card for your holiday shopping. When you use Apple Card on your iPhone, you'll earn up to 3% daily cash back on every purchase, including products at Apple like a new iPhone 16 or Apple Watch Ultra. Apply now in the Wallet app on your iPhone. Subject to credit approval, Apple Card issued by Goldman Sachs Bank USA, Salt Lake City branch. Terms and more at applecard.com. Welcome back. You're listening to Well Now. I'm Maya Feller.
And I'm Kavita Patel. Joining us today is Dr. Alison Fragale, a distinguished professor of organizational behavior at the University of North Carolina. She's an expert on leadership, power dynamics, and influence strategies. She's here to share insights from her new book called Likeable Badass: How Women Get the Success They Deserve. Alison, thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure. Happy to be here.
All right, Alison, we asked the same question of all of our guests, and I'll ask a follow-up question that's a little more tailored to you. How do you define wellness?
Oh, that is a great question. I think I define wellness as having the resource, the capacity to be able to live the life you want.
That is great. So let's follow it up with, what does it then mean to be a likable badass?
So a likable badass is somebody who is seen by the world around them as these two things. Okay, so likable and badass, but what they really mean is deeper than that. It's about the two dimensions that are really critical to our life satisfaction and as therefore part of our wellness, which is, do other people see us as caring, making their lives better, people they want to be around? And that's going to be what I call likable. And then, do other people see us as capable, as people they can rely on, that they know will be able to execute whatever's put in front of them and do it well? And so in psychology, we often call that competence or assertiveness, but on the cover of the book, I call it badass.
We love that badass, actually. It gets directly to the heart of what we all hope to aspire to, truthfully. So, Alison, you've done extensive research on status and influence. And, I'm interested in, what are some of the biggest misconceptions that you feel that people have about how to gain respect and influence on others?
Yeah, it's a great question. So a couple of the things that stand in our way. One is to feel like strategy and authenticity can't coexist, meaning to gain status exists in other people's minds. It's what other people think about us. So to influence your status means to influence how other people see you. And that means showing up in ways that are likely to get other people to see you the way you want to be seen. And there is a narrative about not caring what other people think about us that can stand in our way of thinking about status as something you could really build authentically, that you could be who you want to be, and that you could do the things you want to do, say the things you want to say, but also do it with enough intention that you could shape the way other people see you. And so I think people feel like if I'm authentic, then I'm not caring what anybody else says, and I'm doing what I'm doing without any regard for the consequences. But there's a different version of authenticity, one that sits with strategy, which is to be who you are, but recognizing that it does matter how other people see you and that you could influence that a lot in a very positive way.
Alison, I love that in your book, you just have a lot of great stories. And because we're a show that focuses on kind of just the health and wellness space, we wanted to just ask you to answer a question in light of the fact that women are still underrepresented, particularly in leadership roles in health and wellness. We know that women who work in these fields of healthcare often struggle to have their expertise recognized. What strategies have you found to be most effective for women to overcome these barriers?
The biggest thing for anybody, and I would say I write to women because women do have challenges with status that in comparison, men might not. But status is something that every human being manages. It's a fundamental human need. And so it's important to recognize it's not just something women have to do. It's something everybody has to do. But one of the biggest pieces of advice I give to everybody is to build status before you need it, When you don't need anything from a relationship, it's fun to engage in that relationship and to invest in it. And it feels back to this idea of authentic. It feels really authentic. It feels fun because there's not something that you're about to turn around and ask that person to do for you or something you need from them. And so that's the biggest thing I would say to everybody is, where do I see women get in trouble? I hear from somebody when something has gone wrong in their life. Often they find out that somebody that they value and that they need to respect them doesn't. And it's normally they've encountered something. They have a conflict. Someone's questioned their judgment, or someone's pushing back on one of their ideas, or someone isn't giving them the resources they want. And they're like, aha, this person does not, value me the way I need them to. And now they're very motivated to do something about it. And at that point, you already have an audience who's decided, for whatever reason, perhaps unjustly, that they don't value your contributions. And then it's a hole to dig out of. As opposed to, imagine if I could go back in time to the point when those two people first came in contact. And I could say to that woman, at some point, you're going to really need to influence this person you've just met and you have no idea. Think about what you could do in the first 30 minutes, in the first hour, in the first week you know them, to show up in a way that's going to get them to think, I really respect you. And then think about how you could ride that short investment over these next period of years until fast forward, you're in this conversation. That's what I would really love to be able to do for somebody, is rewind them. So that's what I help people think about, is building relationships with people is a very fun thing to do. We are wired for affiliation. We are wired to have relationships. Like, affiliation is a huge component of wellness. Loneliness is an epidemic. Like, when we don't have relationships, life doesn't feel good. So building those brings us a tremendous amount of joy in a lot of domains. But the only thing that feels bad is when you have to build a relationship because you immediately need to lean on it. And that makes people feel terrible. So I think that's the one piece of advice I'd give to everybody, especially women, is start the second you meet somebody, because you just never know where in life your paths will cross with that person again. And the investments you have to make are so small, so easy, that even if you never see that person again, you won't feel like you wasted your time.
Mm-hmm. That makes a lot of sense, especially because Kavita and I are both in healthcare, right? So a lot of what we do is relationship building with our patients and the people that we interact with. So I think that advice will sit well with folks. In your research, Alison, you've looked a lot at the role of self-promotion, right? So like getting ourselves out there and talking about ourselves in a favorable light. We're wondering, what advice do you have for women specifically who actually want to highlight the accomplishments, however, are wary of facing backlash for actually standing up and saying, hey, I did something fantastic?
And Alison, this may or may not be just me and Maya asking for this advice. So we're just putting it out there in the universe.
It's a very real concern. So back to you asked me about likable and badass. Like, I want to show up as very caring and I want to show up as very capable. Why is self-promoting feel so hard? Because if I have to talk about how capable I am, that very act may not seem so caring. It's boastful. It's immodest. It's not like it's saying you're better than someone else. Those are our fears. And so we think, I want to be seen as caring. Therefore, if I hide the accomplishment, then it's better. But of course, then people don't know that I'm capable. So a couple of things. One is you can wait for your opportunity to tell your story. So I think a lot of people think that self-promotion means you have to run around tapping people on the shoulder who are minding their own business and saying, by the way, let me tell you something great that I just did. But that's not the only option we have. And it's actually not the one I would recommend. The way we get our information out there, we have so many channels. So you likely have perhaps a bio or a CV. You might be on your organization's website. You have a social media profile that people can read. You have a lot of different channels where people get to learn about the things that you do. And without you saying a word, you can use the signature of your email to convey information about you. You can also use the way that you respond to questions that you get asked, like, how are you? What's new? How are you doing? And the information that you share in a very short spurt could be enough to tell a little bit of your story. So what I help people think about is you have a lot of different mediums to use and a lot of different ways that you can wait for opportunities to arise. But when the opportunities arise, you have to be willing to take them.
Yeah. I think, and I'm just going to say like myself personally, when I think about how I show up in spaces, I feel like so many women, I just don't actually ever self-promote. I'm always in the just like the relationship building portion. And I'm never like, hey, I did something interesting, or not even like just using your email. Or I love how in the book you make the suggestion of the autoresponder. Genius, like absolutely genius.
Yeah, this is the idea that there are a lot of tools. So the idea of you turning on your out of office message, this was never something that would have occurred to me if not for somebody I met. And when I started interacting with her over email, I would constantly get these out of offices, and they would basically say like, I'm away from my desk. She's also a speaker. She's like, here's the client I'm serving today. Here's where I am. I'm really focused on them today. So like, and I'll eventually be focused on you soon. So my response will be a little bit delayed. And here's my cell phone number if you want to text me a cute picture of your dog. And as soon as I saw it, I thought that's really brilliant, because we get those emails all the time and we tend to skim them like out of curiosity. I wonder what this person in my life is doing. And some of them are very boring. I'm out of the office until November 8th. And some of them have some information in them. But when you read the information, you never think, oh, what a self-promoting out of office. You just think it's factual and they're explaining to me why they're going to be delayed. But in it, you get to learn a tremendous amount about the person, and you don't have to look anyone in the eye and tell them what you're doing. That's an example. Another, again, back to the idea of putting a little bit of yourself out there. This happened to me recently. I was at an event. I saw a guy that I know, but not super well. We've only met a few times. And I said to him when he walked into the event with sincerity, oh, hey, what's up? How was your day? Almost like an extended version of hello. And that could have ended very quickly, where he was like, it was good, it was fine, whatever. And then I would have just said, okay. And I would just pass right on to the next person. But instead, he said, Alison, I had the best day today. And now, right? I'm curious. You're curious. I can see by you're the nonverbals, which only we can see right now as we're chatting. You're like, I need to know why you had the best day. Did you win Powerball? Like, what happened? So I said, what happened? And he said, oh, the coolest thing. He basically goes on in 2 or 3 minutes to tell me that he lands a new client. He says, I met the guy for the first time. We go to lunch. We totally hit it off. This guy is doing amazing, like essentially humanitarian work. And he's now hiring me, and like through him and our partnership, I'm going to get to like extend and have this reach of like making the world a better place. So it came across as very capable. He landed a new client, but also very caring, that he was talking about how mission driven he was in his work. And it only took 2 minutes. And it felt very natural because I asked him why his day was great. But what he did that was both authentic and strategic is that he was willing to have an answer other than, I'm fine, I'm busy, it's good. He said something that sparked a little bit of conversation and curiosity. And that's where I say you don't have to initiate. He could have said, I had the best day today. And I could have said, oh, that's cool. And I could have left. And he wouldn't have had his opportunity, but he at least controlled the part he could control, which is to make me curious, to start a conversation. And when someone is asking you direct questions, it never comes across as self-promoting if you answer them, because they've asked you to give them that information. Like, where did you go to school? Like, what do you practice? Like, how do you spend your day? And you're telling them, but you have to get them curious. And that's some of the ways that we can start to think about doing it. The other thing we can do is like use each other. So you talk about like walking into spaces. There's probably other people in those spaces. And someone gave me the phrase the other day, which I thought was brilliant. There's the talk up, which I talk about a lot in the book, which is how you talk other people up behind their back. But this other woman I was talking to said there's also the tee up, which is so true. The tee up is where you and I are in conversation, like the three of us are in conversation together. And I could say, oh my gosh, Maya, tell Kavita about like the meeting we were just in yesterday, right? Where we like totally crushed it. And I can then put it out there. It forces you to have to say it in a public forum, but I'm the one who teed it up. And so therefore you're just responding to someone's request to talk about something. And I think this is how we can use each other to help each other tell our stories.
We're going to take a break, and when we come back, we'll hear more from Alison Fragale on being a likable badass. Stay tuned. Apple Card is the perfect card for your holiday shopping. When you use Apple Card on your iPhone, you'll earn up to 3% daily cash back on every purchase, including products at Apple like a new iPhone 16 or Apple Watch Ultra. Apply now in the Wallet app on your iPhone. Subject to credit approval, Apple Card issued by Goldman Sachs Bank USA, Salt Lake City branch. Terms and more at applecard.com.
Ryan Reynolds here for, I guess, my 100th Mint commercial. No. I mean, honestly, when I started this, I thought I only have to do like 4 of these. I mean, it's unlimited premium wireless for $15 a month. How are there still people paying 2 or 3 times that much? I'm sorry, I shouldn't be victim blaming here. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/save. Whenever you're ready.
$45 upfront payment equivalent to $15 per month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Taxes and fees extra. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes. See details.
Hey, it's Austin James. Yes, I'm living with diabetes, but it doesn't have to define me. Thanks to the Freestyle Libre 3 Plus sensor, I get real-time glucose readings throughout the day. The Freestyle Libre 3 Plus sensor is small and easy to wear, giving me the freedom to focus on my life as a parent and a musician. Now this is progress. You can get a free sensor at freestylelibre.us.
Offer available for people who qualify. Visit myfreestyle.us to see all terms and conditions. Certain exclusions apply. Data on file. Abbott Diabetes Care. Per prescription only. Safety info found at freestylelibre.us.
You're listening to Well Now from Slate. I'm Kavita Patel.
And I'm Maya Feller. We're continuing our conversation with Alison Fragale. So, Alison, you have studied how people respond to different communication styles. Are there particular ways of speaking or presenting ideas that tend to be actually more influential for women, especially when we're thinking from the lens of health and wellness?
Yeah, we have options in terms of communicating. So one of the things that gets a lot of conversation is how direct and authoritative and assertive our communication should be. And there's general guidance. It should be more. We shouldn't be hedging or disclaiming or downplaying anything. And there's some truth to that, but there's also a lot of success that can be had with more indirect, softer styles of communication. So the way I encourage people to think about communication is more than the words that are coming out of your mouth. It's an overall effect you're having on your audience. So it can be your nonverbals. It can be your emotions. It can be what we call paraverbals, like things that are related to your speech that aren't words, like the speed or the tone. And so thinking about how do you, through your communication, signal these two things that help us build status, which is I care about other people and I know what I'm doing. More direct words that have no filler and are very to the point, that type of language does a good job signaling I know what I'm doing, but it's not as warm and friendly. The softer style, the less authoritative style that women often use is done for a reason, which is you seem more caring and warmer when you use it. And so nothing is bad, but the way I tell people to think about it is you want to evaluate and be aware of your communication behaviors on the whole. So if you've ever watched somebody who has some type of presentation tic that they don't know that they have a bad habit, and you just think they have no idea they're doing that. We don't want that for ourselves. We don't want to be unintentionally putting something out there that's going to detract from our ability to show that we're caring or that we're very capable. But we have a lot of choices in how we do it. So I talk a lot about the fact that I'm not a great smiler, but smiling conveys warmth. So maybe I'm really assertive in my words, but I'm I'm very great at smiley and you feel very connected to me. Or maybe I'm more tentative in my actual choice of words, but I am very, very quick to be able to answer questions with statistics, data, and specific answers. And so although my style is a little more tentative, the fact that I can so quickly respond with having the fact right at the tip of my tongue would be a way that I would signal I actually know what I'm doing. So you want to audit the way you come across so that you can hit on both. And there's no winning communication strategy of you absolutely have to do it this way. And that's back to that idea where authenticity and strategy can sit. You can start with whoever you are, but it doesn't mean you don't want to then add to it or tweak in some way to make sure you're hitting both of those things that your audience is paying attention to.
Yeah, that's such a great set of points, very broad as well. So not just in the context of kind of health and wellness, but touching all environments and how you present yourself. And you touched on something else, both in the book and even just in our conversation around social capital. So how you can use women such as myself and Maya, but you have some great examples in your book, but you have this theme that kind of gets hit upon where you're building and leveraging social networks to increase influence, particularly in professional settings. You just mentioned the talk up or the tee up. And I've even kind of thought about, like, especially with men, kind of being RSVP'd into rooms that otherwise you would not have been RSVP'd into. How can people leverage social networks to increase their influence?
Yeah. So just like health is a resource, your network is a resource. So its purpose is to serve a need for you. And that need can be a variety of different things, right? It can be affiliation, right? And camaraderie. It can be information, but it can also be helping to build my status. So in terms of being, well respected, part of that is how I show up, but part of it is how other people talk about me. That's the talk up piece. That my network can then open doors for me. The idea of the RSVP. My network can signal to the world that they respect me, and therefore that people who respect them should also respect me by association. So that is a really important way we can start to use our network to multiply the efficiency of being able to build relationships. So anytime you've ever had what we just commonly call a referral, like you have to talk to so-and-so for whatever it is, whether it's for, a medical issue or whether it's for a podcast guest or something. When someone says, oh my goodness, you need to know so-and-so, they are amazing. That person has already had their status built a little bit in your eyes because someone you respect has said they think highly of that person. So that's what we want to think about, how we leverage. When I think about leveraging a network, I think about this piece of it is not just your direct connections, but how the people you've already invested in help you build and get to the next person, and how powerful that really is, because we all respond in the same way. If I respect you and you tell me this next person is the person, I'm sold, right? I'm already, they would have to do a lot when I showed up in front of me to ruin that impression. Right? They'd have to be horrible. If they just showed up and were just kind of that alone, I'd still really respect them because you told me to. So that, I think, is what I see people who have done a very good job building their status do. And what I think we can all take a lesson from and do better. So to ask for what we want. I mean, there was a quote from Jada Pinkett Smith about have the courage to say what you need in the moment. Most people aren't mind readers. And either one of two things will happen. You'll either get what you asked for, or you'll find that the person you're asking doesn't have the capacity to deliver. And both are gifts. And I thought, isn't that right? A yes and a no are very informative in our network in different ways. But the ask of this is what would be very helpful to me. Everyone loves that kind of clarity when you're in a relationship, whether it's with your spouse and you'd say, why would I guess as to what made you happy? If you just explicitly told me this is what I need, I would be happy to do it. The same at work. So asking people to invite you into rooms, asking people to talk you up in rooms you aren't in, asking people how you want them to behave and interact with you when you are in public spaces. So for example, if I might say, hey, I get kind of talked over by a couple of the very dominant people in this room. It would be really great, because I know you respect me, if you paid attention in our next meeting. And when that happens, cut it off and say, no, sorry, Alison was saying something. Let's go back to that. Or amplifying what I said, being really specific in what you want. And people who respect you are very excited for that kind of clarity. And we start to get people showing up in our environments the way we want them to, if we give them a little bit of instruction.
And Alison, that goes back to the relationship building.
Yeah.
Right? It's how do we build these relationships? How do we have those interpersonal actions and make it meaningful so that by the time we're asking for respect, that it's already built in? I mean, this is,
I think it feels really fun to think about, investing in people and being engaged in reciprocity with people who care about you and that you care about in exchange, and to say, here's what I really need. And that people like to be helpful. I think something people need to remember. We don't like relationships that are out of balance, including relationships where we are always the giver. The recipients don't like that. If you've ever been in a relationship where somebody always does for you, but never will accept the simplest thing from you in exchange, you actually start to dislike it after a while because you feel so beholden and you think, this is not equal. I'm always taking, and I don't want to be in the taking situation. So allowing people to give back to you also helps keep those relationships in balance. And so we think that we've just incurred a debt, and that can be the case. If you're always the taker, yes, you're going to incur debts. But if you're just sometimes the taker, occasionally the taker, you're actually helping keep the relationship in balance, because people want to know that they've added value. When you know you've helped someone today because they asked you to do something and you did it, you're like, check, that was good. I helped them. I care about them. So I think that's something we need to remember, is that we build relationships through those asks. We don't just deplete them.
But you're also pointing out, and the book has some nice examples as well, of being specific in that ask, just kind of wandering in and saying, Maya, I need your help and having it be so broad and so vague that you can't take action on it. But even just that example, Alison, of you're in a meeting and there's always this certain kind of behavior. By the way, I've been in those meetings. I will be in those meetings. I'm already thinking, and that might not necessarily be the colleague could be male, female, non-binary, it could be anybody, but just going to that person and asking for that very specific action creates that awareness. Like all things, it seems so simple, yet we don't do it.
We don't do it at all. That's the thing that's so wild. And I feel like it's ingrained in us as women to actually, not ask for what we want, but to also be givers. And also there's like a giver, but in the extreme where we're just constantly putting out, and then we feel ashamed of requesting.
Absolutely. And that's why I think you have to just start to get into the practice of asking for little things, so that if you've saved it up and you haven't asked for anything for a decade and all of a sudden you're going to make this ask, it feels so momentous, as opposed to, this is just like Tuesday at 11 a.m. People, I need something. Can someone help me out? A good place to start is always to think, if it were me, what would I want? Now, not everyone's like us. And so we definitely can get in trouble assuming everyone wants what we want. But it's not a terrible place to start, because human beings do have a tremendous amount in common. So if, for example, there was something that somebody wanted and that you could do to help them that was very easy, you would really want to know what it is. All of us here, right? We're sitting here, we definitely care about, making relationships better, making other people's lives better, making women's lives better. But I guarantee you, all three of us have today missed opportunities to speak on behalf of other people. Why? Because we had a full calendar of things to do. And I didn't get up solely waking up this morning and saying, okay, who else can I promote or elevate today? Sometimes an opportunity kind of hits me in the face and then I do it. But there's a lot of other times where you might have, think something positive about somebody, but you don't do anything about it. You're not sure they need your help and they haven't asked for it. So they might be perfectly fine. You respect them and you just assume everybody else does too. So there is no problem until they tell you that they need something. So you would do a lot more. I would do a lot more if someone came to me and said, hey, Alison, here's the thing that I need. And so one of the funny things about writing this book is that people are taking me up on this. And so now I do get a bunch of emails like, hey, Alison, here's the thing I would like you to do for me. And sometimes I can say yes, and sometimes I have to say no. But I appreciate all of them, because they're 100% correct. If they hadn't sent me these emails, I wouldn't even know they exist. I certainly wouldn't be doing anything to help their lives. So we will all do more if people ask us. And that's the same is true for them. People are just like us. They will do more if we ask them. And it could be anybody. It doesn't have to be somebody who's in a different demographic group than you are in. It can be somebody that's in the same group. It just means that at that moment, they have the status or the ability to help build your respect, and they'd be happy to do it if you ask them.
So to go into some of those emails and DMs, I like to the women in healthcare. Have you had the experience of any women in healthcare coming to you and saying, hey, I could use some guidance or advice or support, and then they benefited from your teaching and guidance?
All the time. So I did not set out, I still don't intend to serve one profession or industry over the other. I'm a psychologist. I focus on human beings. All organizations are filled with human beings. But if I look at the industries where I am asked most often to serve women by the women in those industries, it's healthcare, finance, and then like traditional, what I'd call like traditional heavy industry or manufacturing. And those three groups are groups that have just kind of found me and come to me more than any other in terms of trying to find a way to tell their story. So like in medicine, for example, or healthcare, like you have very highly trained people who are often from the point perhaps that they were a child, envisioned themselves in a role taking care of other people. But you now, like to build your career, you're like, wait a second, it smacks you in the face. Oh, I have to like promote myself. I can't just like be selfless and care for other people. So there is a bit of a, sometimes like a paradox in the profession of being selfless and taking care of others is so much about what it is to be in healthcare or wellness. At the same time, if you do not do some of these things, like to put your own oxygen mask on first, you don't have enough standing to be able to help people. So I think about it like status is a resource. If you want to help people, they need to be able to be influenced by you. And whether that is you're influencing an end user or a customer, a patient, a client, whatever it is, you can't help anybody if you can't be influential. And so you have to think about building your own status as a resource to be able to influence people. And that is how you're going to be able to care and take care of them. And so it runs the whole gamut. But I do think that like if I look at women in healthcare and wellness who come to me, a lot of it is this idea that to self-promote is extremely far from anything they were ever taught to do, coached to do, or even thought about doing when they were so heavily focused for so long on one, being an expert in their domain and like learning all the things you need to learn. And then to think about putting other people first and their care at all times. And so it often hits them when they first step into some type of leadership position. That's when I tend to get a call of, oh my, now I have to like, influence across an organization. And this is very hard. And I feel like I'm behind, and sometimes they might be in having been able to build their status. So I think that's the biggest one that I see. And I get why it happens. And so that's why I say like from day one to start to think about how do you invest in these relationships, because it's a big field. It's a small field, right? You come into contact with the same people again and again. So you can leverage your status a lot if you've invested in it at the beginning.
I can't think of things that are more true than that statement about, especially in kind of healthcare or medicine. So you're right. It's the book and all of it is sector agnostic, but I could switch it out and put medicine, healthcare in all of these sections. So maybe we can do a little future looking, kind of put your crystal ball on for a little bit.
Sure.
As you look ahead, Alison, what gives you hope about women's ability to gain more influence, to be likable badasses in any of these sectors? And then what changes, structurally included, are needed to create more equitable environments, or to create an environment where we can come in and feel like we can be likable badasses from the jump?
Okay, so what gives me hope? Several things. One is that when I think about the people in my life that I would just feel like most epitomize likable badass, they're all women. Everybody has amazing women in their networks who are extremely caring and extremely capable. And particularly the caring piece, the most caring people I know are women. And women are holding more of the degrees, they're rated as equal and better leaders. So we're doing the thing 100%. It's just about cultivating a little bit more of the reward on the perception piece of it. So that makes me really, really optimistic. I look around and there's just a wealth of talent in terms of women everywhere. It also makes me optimistic when I think about like the next generation of people, like kids. So I have 3 kids, 1 girl, 2 boys. And all my kids, they kind of know what I do. So they talk a little bit about gender, perhaps more than they would otherwise. But my daughter had to do like a, what do I want you to know about me kind of thing for the beginning of the school year this year in 4th grade. And I don't know, one of the things was like, the most important thing you need to know about me is I'm amazing. That's what she wrote in there. And I was like, that's right. You are amazing. I mean, she was just, no hesitation. I'm amazing. And so I do think that when I was growing up, there was a huge amount of opportunity for women in the workforce compared to what my mom had. My mom basically said, like, if you wanted to work beyond, if you want to do anything beyond high school, you were a nurse, a teacher, or a secretary at the time, as they would call it, right? Those were the only three things a woman would really consider doing for the most part. And then by the time I come along, it's like, no, I could do anything, right? I could do whatever I want. At the same time, there was definitely let's just pretend that there is no gender. Like, okay, just, you can do anything a boy can do. Just, there you go. That's it. That's your talk. Move along. And I think what it did was it raised a generation of people who just weren't completely blind to gender, but didn't really think a lot about how to navigate it. And now I'm hoping that at least in my daughter's generation, we're coming into this space of both seeing ourselves like as I'm amazing, like I can do anything, that I think there was in my generation as well. But now a recognition or like a more savviness perhaps of how to navigate differences of all kinds at a younger age than I think I was ever exposed to. And so that makes me very hopeful as well. I think what has to change structurally is we certainly need better representation at top ranks of diversity in general, gender just being one example. We need more diverse senior leadership in every kind of industry, for sure, than we're getting. I think we get there in a couple ways, but this is actually one of the reasons I really am committed to talking about status is that there's a logic of like, well, we could just get there by just, if we were willing, and some organizations are, of just putting people like in those positions at equal numbers. The problem with that, what we see is it's not working because if we simply put somebody in a role and that person is not respected and valued, now that person becomes treated terribly because we feel like you have a lot of power, but do you really deserve it? Why are you there? We don't respect you. And then people leave. And we see, I'll spare you all the evidence of this, but we see this in a lot of situations, particularly with women. So the challenge with status is we can't legislate it. You cannot force another person to respect somebody. It just doesn't work that way. But what we can do as leaders is be aware of how important status is for people's well-being at work and in life, and start to not just promote people, which we absolutely need to be doing, but while we are promoting them, sending the signals to the larger community and environment that this is a person who is highly worthy of respect. They are very, very good at what they do, and they are extremely concerned about doing it for the benefit of people other than themselves. And when we combine those two things, a willingness to actually put people in power and leadership that is willing to every single day reinforce the message, this is a person of respect, the audience will listen, right? They'll take their cues. But I think we've been failing on that second one a bit because it feels harder. It's like, it's easy for me to promote you relative to try to get everybody all the time to respect you. And it has to be both. So I think that's what we need. And I have to be optimistic. Like we have come a long way compared to prior generations. The progress is not fast enough when it comes to any ascribed status characteristic, but I'm not giving up. We have no choice. We're moving forward. We're coming up with new science, new tools, like new narratives to talk about these kind of things. And so I hope by putting status in the conversation, then we help people understand how those two things really go hand in hand, status and power, and how we can help get both of them in people's hands.
Alison Fragale is an organizational psychologist and author of Likeable Badass, How Women Get the Success They Deserve. Alison, thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure.
That's our show this week. Well Now is produced and edited by Vic Whitley-Berry. Ben Richmond is Slate's Senior Director of Podcast Operations. Alicia Montgomery is Vice President of Audio.
We'd love to hear from you. Email us at wellnow@slate.com. If you want to support this show, consider becoming a Slate Plus member. You'll get to listen to Well Now ad-free, as well as hear bonus material from our show and a ton of other Slate podcasts. You'll also have full access to all articles on Slate's website. And be sure to tune in next Wednesday as we tackle another part of the wellness industry. I'm Maya Feller.
And I'm Kavita Patel. Thanks for listening.